In this lesson, we are going to explore the tools within the Massing and Site tab. Our first exercise is going to include creating a 3D topo surface using an imported DWG file that was created in AutoCAD. Then we will create a building pad that will be the basis for the conceptual design of the building. Our first step is going to be to import the CAD link. We are using link over import because link gives us the option to update the CAD file over time, whereas import would not give us the option to update the link. From the Insert tab, I will go to Link CAD. I'm going to link in the site topo. I want to make sure that this is set to not have it be current view only so that we get the 3D geometry from AutoCAD. The colors I can leave as preserve, and this will help it be an identifier of whether it's a CAD element or a Revit element. I'm going to leave it set to auto origin to origin. I'm going to place it at level 1, and I'm going to allow Revit to orient it to the view and correct the lines that are slightly off axis, just so I can have a more accurate topo file. After I click open, you can see that we have an imported topo file. I'm going to jump to our 3D view here so we can take a look at the different elevations that we have from the topo file. The red lines are the topographic lines. The green are going to represent the future building pad. Our next step is going to be to jump back to the Massing and Site tab. And then I can start by using the Topo Surface tool. With Topo Surface, we have the option to place points, which would mean clicking along each of these points and setting the specific elevation. In this case, what we want to do is we're going to use the create from import, and I'm going to select import instance. After I've done that, I can pick my import instance, and then I have the option to use the layers that come in with it, or I can pare this down to just the ones I want. I'm going to go ahead and select both C building pads and C topo minor and hit OK. Revit's going to identify all the different points and the elevation, as you can see here. After I've analyzed it, I can go ahead and click the Finish Surface, a green check mark here. And what I'll do now is I'm going to go ahead and switch from hidden to shaded so that we can see the topo that was created. The next step is we're going to create our building pad. After we create the building pad, we're no longer going to need this import instance, so we can go ahead and remove it. From Massing and Site, I'll select building pad, and I'm going to use the pick lines tool to pick the outline of the building pad. And I'm just going to go through and pick each one of these green lines. Once I know I have a continuous boundary, I can go ahead and finish the sketch, and now I have a building pad. Now that the building pad is created, we can go ahead and remove the import instance. To do that, I'm going to go to the Insert tab, select Manage Links, pick the CAD Formats tab, and then I can select the site topo that we imported, and then click Remove, and hit OK. In this video, we will create a conceptual design of a building using the In-Place Mass tool. This lesson will include creating levels and creating an in-place mass. First thing we want to do is we want to set the levels that we're going to use to help define the mass. I'll go to the south elevation, and I'm going to take a look at the levels that are already created and see what we can use with those. Level 2 is a little low, so I'm going to set that to 13.5 feet. And then I'll add another level above that, which will represent the roof level. From the Architecture tab, I'll go to Level, and carefully aligning it to the left extent and right extent, I'll add what's called level 3. and I'll go ahead and put this one at 28 feet. Now to define the top of my building, I'm just going to go ahead and copy what we're calling level 3 up another 4 feet to represent the top of the parapet. Now that I have the levels set, I can go ahead and rename them. Starting with level 4, I'll call this one top of parapet. And level 3, I'll call that one roof. Because this level has views associated with it, when I change the name, it's going to ask me if I would like to rename the corresponding views. In this case, I'm going to say yes, because I want the roof level to be represented accurately in the project browser. Now I'm going to jump back to our 3D view. And with those levels created, we can go ahead and create our mass. To do this, I'm going to go to the Massing and Site tab, and I'm going to create an in-place mass. When we create a mass, we need to make sure that the mass element is visible. And sometimes when you start that, it's going to ask you if that element type is visible. In this case, it is. We can give it a name. I'll just leave it as mass 1. And now we can draw lines to represent the footprint of the mass elements. So I'll start with using the rectangle tool, and I'm going to let it draw on the face of an element, and in this case it's going to be our building pad. So you can see how it's highlighted when I move the mouse over the top. Using the rectangle tool, I'm just going to go through and add a few rectangles. And after I create the rectangle, you can see it's kind of a closed loop there. I can click Create Form, and it'll create a masked form for me. I'll just repeat that process a few more times. And after I've created the forms, I can go back in and I can adjust their heights to suit the needs of the project. And if you had to be precise, you can see if I click this face, I have the option to adjust those dimension values to whatever I want it to be. You could also be a little bit more free form about it and just kind of drag them up and down as you see fit. Now that I have the masses created, what I can do is I can subdivide these into different shapes, or I can cut out a portion of it using the void form option, which is what we're going to do here. So I'll use the rectangle again, and what I want to do in this case is I'll draw a mass kind of the same way we were doing it before, but this time I want to draw it as a void so I can cut out a corner of it. So just kind of making sure that I'm highlighted on the pad so that I can use that as the footprint. I can cut out a portion of the mass here on this side using the void form. You don't have to be super precise with this because we can always adjust it later. So instead of create form, solid form, this time I'm going to click void, and then I can use the Z-axis toggle to drag it up to the point where I want to create the void. If I click off to the side, you can see I just now cut a hole in the building. I can use that same freeform modeling using the UCS here to move it around and adjust the void to suit my needs. Now I want to fill this in with a different material. So I'll go ahead and draw another rectangle back into this area here and create a solid form. But this time I'll bring it all the way up to where we terminated the void. And now I've got a shape that we can work with. The next thing we can do is we can actually create edges if we select the side points here. And to do that, we can select one of the edges And I can use the add edge option to divide this up. So you can see as I move my mouse around, there's a line that's going to show up here. And I'm not going to be super precise with this, but we're just going to go through and create a conceptual shape that we can then apply different materials to. So I could do this as I go around this center mass to create portions that might be glass or might be brick or some different materials. Once we're done, we can just hit escape and we can go ahead and finish the mass. At this point, what we can do is we can go in and we can apply the different wall type or roof types to the surfaces of the mass. So from the Architecture tab, I can go to Wall and I can pick Wall by Face. This will allow me to add walls to the different faces, and just like anything else, I can go in and I can pick the type I want to use. So I'll pick brick on CMU or brick on metal stud, and I can set the location line based on the mass, and that's what's going to determine where it sits relative to the mass. So notice it's sitting on the inside of that face, and so if I add it to all these sides, I now have a brick element. And I can do the same thing with roof. So if I go to Architecture, Roof by Face, I can actually pick the top surface and create the roof. With the roof, if I wanted to, I could actually drop this elevation, which will drop the roof to the desired elevation. Now I'm going to add the walls. So I can use Wall by Face again, and I can go in and I can say make some of these solid and some of these glass. And so I'm going to use the generic 8-inch wall type for this one, because I'm not really sure what the material needs to be. And I can place it here, say in this location around the building. Just to give myself some walls to work with here. And this will start to give us a good idea of what the building's going to look like. So looking at it, I can see that there's a change that I'd like to make, and that's not a problem. I can select the mass and say Edit in Place. And now we're back into the mass editing options, where I could say pick one of these faces and modify it so that there's a little bit of a setback here. And here as well. And I'll do the same thing on this side. Once I'm done with the editing, I can finish mass, and we can do the same thing we were doing before. So I'll go back to Architecture, Wall by Face. This time I'm going to use the exterior glazing option, and then I could put on these faces a curtain wall. And the last step here is going to be to add the last pieces of the roof. And I like to do these as separate elements so that they're easier to modify. So just like the other one, I'll set this down so that we have our roof down below the parapet here. And then on this one, I'll just put it right on top. In this video, we are going to add materials to the walls that we created. To do this, we will be using the Paint tool to apply materials located in the Material Library and Asset Browser. First thing we want to do is go to our Manage tab, open up Materials, and then we can identify the material that we want to use. In this case, we don't have one, so we need to create it. I'm going to go to the bottom, click on the sphere to create a new material, and then I'm going to open up the asset browser to assign a material type to it. For this exercise, I'm going to go to the Autodesk Physical Assets and expand it. This is going to be a metal material, so I'll look for metal. I can expand that to filter it even further. And I'd like to use aluminum. And you can see here there's a bunch of options that we can use for different types of aluminum. In this case, I'm going to use the aluminum flat. And to add this asset to the material I created, I'll just select this icon to replace the current asset with this material. Now that I'm done with the asset browser, I'll go ahead and close it. And I can change the color to suit the needs of my project. Once I'm done editing the material, I'll go ahead and rename it and give it a name that matches how it's going to be used in the project. In this case, I'll call it metal panel. The other material that I'd like to load in is a glass material, and that already exists. So I can use the filter bar at the top, and I can search glass. And I have two options. I have glass and glass clear glazing. I'm going to go with the glass material. I can open up the asset browser again, and instead of metal this time, what I can do is I can go and I can find glass. And you can see we have a bunch of different glass types we can use. I'm going to select the dark bronze reflective. And when I replace the asset, you can see it turns it into a dark bronze. I can do the same thing with the clear glazing. If I wanted to make that a clear reflective, I can change the asset to make it a more reflective material. I'm going to go ahead and close the asset browser and hit OK and the material browser. And now what I can do is I can use the paint tool from the Modify tab to apply the materials to my project. So I'm going to start with the metal panel, and I'll just search at the top to find metal panel, which would be this material here. And then I can paint it to all the different surfaces where I want to apply the metal panel. Now that I have the metal panel applied, what I can do is I can modify the panel type for my curtain wall by using the tab key to select the actual panel, going to edit type, and I can change the material to be the material that I want it to be for this case. It's a little deceiving because we picked a bronze glass color, but our glass is showing up as blue. So what I could do is I could change this to say use render appearance. And when I hit OK, now my glass is turned into a more bronze color. If I wanted to differentiate the two, say this area from this one, then I would need a different panel type for each one of my different glass panels. In this video, we're going to go ahead and create a camera view, make adjustments to the lighting and shadows, and create a quick rendering to show off the materials that we've created. First thing we want to do is jump over to a floor plan view. I just find it easier to create the camera view of the angle that I want to see of the building. So you can see our three different forms here. What I'll do is I'll jump to the View tab. I'm going to find 3D View in the middle, and I'm going to click the bottom half, and I have default 3D view, which is what we've been using, camera, and walkthrough. In this case, we're going to use the camera. I'd like to take a look at the building kind of from this angle here. So what I'll do is I'll select a point, say down in this area, click to start, and then I'll move the camera out. And the key here is I want to make sure that the extents of my view go all the way beyond the building so that I can see the whole thing. I wouldn't worry about it not showing some of these edges because we can adjust that after the fact. So I'll click to end the camera. You can see it'll pop out a camera view for us. And then what I'll do in this case is I'll just kind of extend the viewport to match what I want to see for the rendering. Now this is the camera view that we'll use for our rendering. So what I want to do is I'm going to set it to be in shaded so that we can get a good idea what it's going to look like. And I also want to turn on my shadows. And that'll show me what the lighting is set. If I don't like the way the lighting looks, what I can do is I can adjust in the graphic display options. And I can adjust my shadows, whether it's cast or ambient. And I can adjust my lighting from being a in-session lighting to more of a still setting with a specific location, date, and time. In this case, I'm going to go with the fall equinox. And you can see the lighting changed based on that revision. And now what I can do is I can set it to render. So I'll pick on the teapot in the view control bar. And pull the rendering settings over here. And the easiest way to do a quick rendering is to go through and pick one of these settings. For this exercise, I'm going to use medium. And I'm going to leave the scheme as exterior sun only. And the sun setting is what we had it set before. If I wanted a higher resolution rendering, I could change it to a print setting and give it the desired DPI. But in this case, I'm going to keep it at screen so it'll render a little quicker. We have a few options with our backgrounds. We can use a few different sky options. We can use a solid color. We can use an image that we import, or we can just have it be transparent so that we could update and edit the background in a post-processing program like Photoshop. In this case, I'm going to go with a few clouds. And once I have it all set, we'll just click render. You can see that we had the brick material from before, and then the reflective glass and the metal panel on the different surfaces. From here, I could save the rendering to the project, which will give me a view that'll save in the project browser, or I can export the file to a JPEG or other type of image file.